They were live.
Yeah, it says we're live on YouTube.
Okay.
Do you have the link to it? We gotta send it to Katrina.
We're live on YouTube.
We're live on YouTube. Hello.
Hello, everyone. We're supposed to be live on Facebook, but Facebook was acting up, so we're live on YouTube instead.
Hey, sometimes in social media, you just gotta be flexible.
That's right.
We should probably wait till people kind of come over. Do we want to introduce ourselves for folks who might not know us?
Yes, let's do that. I'm Christina Rhea. I'm the head of education at Seed&Spark.
And I am Brie Castellini, Seed&Spark's film community manager, currently trying to tweet out the link to this YouTube page.
Yes, we're social mediaing as we speak.
Mm-hmm. It's sort of on brand. Cool. So we'll just let people wait. What is your background in social media? Do you remember your first ever social media account?
So I was very anti-social media early on before I started to realize how it could help me build an audience. So I had a Facebook account. I created it in 2009, I think, and I didn't have a profile picture for like 3 years.
Wow, 2009 is late.
Super late, yeah, because I was like very against it. I was like, I want my privacy. It took me a long time to people would be like, put up a photo, no one's gonna know who you are. And I was like, I don't care. And I didn't do anything but take like stupid quizzes.
The way that Facebook truly should be used. Honestly, anyone using Facebook for anything other than taking quizzes is using it wrong.
That's right. But then Twitter, I finally joined in 2011, but I didn't really start using it until my second crowdfunding came in 2012, when I was like, oh, this isn't just telling people what I'm doing. This is actually trying to find people who care about what I want to make. And I realized there was like a huge community of horror fans on there. So that's really how I got started using social media for real.
Cool.
What about you?
I have always been very into social media. My dad was a computer technician when I was growing up, so I learned about a lot of like emerging technologies from him, and I was also really interested in it. I've had my own website since I was 11 years old, so social media was like a natural like mover over. So I was on MySpace probably as early as 2004, 2005. I was on Facebook pretty early after that because I wanted to see it as like a comparison. And like, you know, how is it different from what I already know that it is? And then also, I joined Twitter in 2008, and I have been pretty active pretty quickly. So yeah, I've been on social media forever, and it used to be like really insipid, and then I kind of took a break from it, and then I got a desk job again, and then my social media use really exploded. So it looks like we might be able to kind of get started from what I'm seeing. It looks like we've already got DMs, so.
Perfect. Okay, so maybe we should reintroduce ourselves for anyone who's just tuning in. I'm Christina Rhea, the head of education at Seed&Spark.
And I'm Brie Castellini. I am film community manager at Seed&Spark.
And we're here today to talk about social media for crowdfunding, but also just audience building, marketing in general.
Yeah, in general, whenever we do a presentation about crowdfunding, the strategies that we use to talk about crowdfunding can be applied to pitching in general, to marketing in general. Anytime you want to be communicating with people you don't know very well, to get them on board with something that you're working on, things that we talk about on our various educational events and in events like this will probably apply to you.
That's right. So we're gonna start presenting with a deck and just kind of go through some foundational information, and then hopefully we'll be able to take questions. We have Katrina, our team member on social, collecting questions for us for the end. Take it away, Brie.
Cool. Can you see the whole screen?
I can, yep.
Cool. It's saying that I'm only seeing part of it, but we'll see. Hopefully it's fine. Well, hello, welcome to Social Media Mastery by Seed&Spark. This is the intro slide. We don't really need to spend time on it. So 1 to 2%. What's that number? You've probably heard me say it before if you've been to any of these other ones. This is the stat that I like to talk about because 1 to 2% is the conversion rate, the general conversion rate of a social media share to a crowdfunding contribution. So only 1 to 2% of people who will actually see a social media post about your campaign, and that's like the main way that they're seeing that information, will actually end up giving you money. I don't put this number at the top to freak you out and to say this whole presentation is going to be about social media bashing. That's not the point. The point is to understand how it fits into your overall strategy, because social media should not be the be all end all of your marketing strategy, either for crowdfunding or for, marketing, whatnot, whatever else you're doing with social media. But it is still an important part of it. So don't go into this thinking, if I'm good at Twitter, I will be good at crowdfunding.
Right.
As always, like we talked about last week, email and direct outreach is far, far more effective, but that doesn't mean that social media can't still be a good part of audience building.
And also, just to add, I think it's to kind of set up the idea that social media is not just about announcing things. It's not just about putting out something and waiting for people to engage. It's about jumping in to things that are already happening. And we'll talk more about that.
Yes, absolutely. Social media should be social. And that's not just like a corny catchphrase. It's real. If you're just posting into the void, announcing things, shouting at people and hashtagging them, why would anyone engage with that? So this is just sort of a brief overview of what is out there in terms of like the social media that you have an option to choose for marketing and crowdfunding purposes. I haven't used some of these, and I'm sure there are others that I am just too old and out of date to understand. But we kind of broke these down into 3 categories. Platforms where the main intention of that platform is to curate your own feed. So like your account, your profile on it is sort of what you want to make appealing. We then also join pre-existing communities is sort of like the classic, wow, I'm losing my mind, message board style things, a place where you join other communities and are just a member in a community rather than a person whose page someone might follow. And then the combo, column A, column B, that's also a factor here. So it's important to understand what category the social media platforms that you're looking to promote to, like their primary use is. Because if you go on, Reddit or Pinterest and try to like cultivate your own page, that might be somewhat useful, but ultimately the power of those platforms is going to come from your engagement in pre-existing interest communities and being able to meet them where they're at, follow the rules of those particular communities, and get people on your side that way. Versus a more curational social media platform, which is what most tend to be, where you want to make sure that your page is worth following, not just because you contribute interesting things, but because you're also posting interesting things. You're curating content that is relevant to your audience. And so that can be your own work, and it often will become your own work eventually. But if somebody doesn't know who you are, why would they follow you? Think about that before you post anything on your social media accounts. If somebody had absolutely no context for you and your work, why would they follow this account? Because if all you're posting about is you, that's probably not going to be very interesting since nobody knows who you are. So think about it from a perspective of curating. What can you curate on your account that will be interesting to follow, even if your work isn't what somebody's there for? So, if you are a horror filmmaker, curate content related to horror movies. So reviews that you really enjoyed or that you've posted yourself. Podcasts where they talk about horror content, fun classic horror posters and like images like that, crediting the source, of course, things like that. Why would horror fans follow your social media so that you could eventually promote to them? Well, what do they already like? And how can you curate your feed so that when they follow you, they know that you're the source that they go to for that kind of content? Versus communities where that's more social based, that's less curatorial and more like, you need to be a good member in good standing of these communities. Reddit is very good at moderation in terms of, well, not everywhere, but individual Reddit boards are very good at having very strict rules. And if you just go in and promote and leave, they will delete your posts. So if you are not posting in that community, if you are not a known username who contributes conversation as much as you contribute like individual content, then you're probably not going to find a lot of benefit from that platform. So this is just all to say, understand what the point of this platform is and how to use it best before you focus any of your energy on using it for marketing purposes. Yeah, that's good. Okay, moving on. So we thought it would be worth talking a little bit at least about the actual like statistics. So I pulled a couple of graphs from the Pew Research Center in terms of like who was on which social media. This is a good starting point in terms of figuring out what social media you should be on. But I also want to point out that, like we talk about in our crowdfunding workshop a lot, your demographics are going to be a lot more specific than, women ages 18 to 29, because there are a lot of those. So you're not going to be able to target everyone, but having a basic understanding of where your audience tends to be from statistics is at least like a starting point where you can start to decide like, all right, well, I can see that, Facebook takes a dive unless you're, Facebook is popular, but if I want to, reach older audiences, 65 plus, even though they use it at a less frequent rate than younger people, they're still more frequently going to be on Facebook than on LinkedIn or Instagram. You're probably not going to find, a 65 plus person on Instagram. So if your audience trends older, that's not going to be a good strategy. I also just wanted to point out some interesting insights I found. So this is probably not a surprise, but Instagram is almost as popular as Facebook with ages 18 to 29, which I think most of us already kind of intuitively know, but it's worth noting how like close it's getting to the use of Facebook. Also, like I mentioned, even though it's lower than other use cases, if you're trying to reach an older audience, Facebook's probably going to be your place. And this is something that I didn't know, but apparently Hispanic people tend to use Instagram more than any other race of people, at least that were surveyed for this Pew research. So I thought that was interesting. If you have a primarily Latinx or Hispanic audience, then this is probably going to be the platform for you. Maybe Instagram should be a factor in your outreach. And then also, this is, for some reason, they didn't have a graph for this one. They just have like numbers, but these are the numbers for users on Twitter, Pinterest, and Snapchat. So I just kind of pulled out two of these. But I remember, Christina, when I was sharing with you this presentation before we actually went live, you were talking about how you were surprised by some of these numbers because you assumed that Twitter usage was much higher.
Yeah, that's right.
Because she and I both tend to use Twitter, I would argue, more than most. Would you say that your use on Twitter is higher than your use on Instagram? Because I know you're active on Instagram too.
I would say yes, that used to be the case. Lately, maybe a little bit, maybe not so, just because Twitter is so political and like I go there maybe just to kind of consume that kind of content, and Instagram is more
Sure.
escape. And like I can see what my friends are up to in their apartments right now. So yeah, but I would say normally under normal circumstances, especially when it comes to promoting and like engaging audience, definitely more Twitter. And so that's like my bias, right? Because I'm using it, I assume more people are using it, and especially more people my age, like in my age bracket.
Mhm.
But yeah, so like you might be surprised. That's why it's so important that you find out about your actual audience.
And that's the thing, is that just like Christine and I sure might be overestimating how many people are actually on Twitter. But the other thing is that just because 38% of all people in our general age demographic doesn't mean that more specifically, like women in this age bracket, women of color, queer women, like whatever the more specific version of our audience demographic is, isn't using it at a higher rate. So like that's kind of why I put these at the top, because like people are always asking like, well, what's the percentage of users on Twitter? It's like, well, here's that information, but you're not going to be targeting everyone ages 18 to 29. So the numbers are going to differ the more specific you get. So that's why it's so important to be asking your audience questions, asking them where they're at, asking them where they spend their time and at what times. You're going to get a lot more valuable information than the Pew Research Center, because all they can do is give us generalities, which is not valuable for indie creators.
That's right.
So this is a question that we get a lot in our crowdfunding workshop when we talk about social media. People are always asking, if I'm going to make a new account on a social media platform, should I make a like personal account? So like for me, Brie Castellini, or should I make an account for my project, Buy-In Film? It's the most recent thing I worked on. So the problem is that there's not a good answer. It's not like, oh, solo account, obviously, and it's not always both. So we wanted to kind of break down like the pros of each individual option, and then you can kind of, use your own decision making to like decide which one is best for you. So the pros of a solo account are that if you have had the solo account for a while, if you're not creating a new one and you already have a following on your account, that's a reason to go solo. You will plan on making multiple projects in short succession. That might also be a reason to stay with a solo account, because it's not going to be worth it to make a whole brand new account for your project if it's going to be kind of one and done and you don't have anything else to say about it, but you know you're going to have like multiple sketches or, you know, multiple short films that are coming out in short succession. It might make sense to just like center the theme around you, the creator, versus the project. If you are the name or face of the project, like the writer, director, creator, and or star, like if you are who people associate this project with, not the like project itself, then you know, you're probably not gonna need the project account, or certainly you don't need it as often. So if you are sort of the marketing face and strength behind a project, that's a reason to be yourself on social versus, you know, hide behind your generalized account. But there are also a lot of pros to having a project specific account or a production company specific account, depending on what makes sense for you. If you're uncomfortable speaking in first person, this can totally be a thing. This is something that I found very helpful when I was first starting out with marketing. Despite the fact that I seem like an obnoxious person who loves to talk about themselves, which is true, I wasn't always super comfortable with like the marketing part of that. Like being just like a narcissist in my regular day life is very different from being on Twitter and saying, hey, pay attention to me. At least so boldly. So it was helpful to have like an email account and like a Twitter account that was just for the project that I was making, so that I could sort of speak as a monolith and not have to be quite so vulnerable. I don't recommend this long term, because ultimately at a certain point you do need to, if you're going to be posting as yourself, like step outside of your project account. Like I'm going to make more than one project, but especially if you're new to marketing, it might be more comfortable to be able to use like we phrasing, like, oh, we love this comment or something like that, versus saying like, I love you, person who commented. So that might be a consideration. If your project has a lot of supplemental content is another reason why you would probably want a project specific account. So if you have a supplemental podcast or a making of web series, or you know, a lot of photos, like if you have a lot of content around your project that isn't just like the link to the project or the link to like the Amazon Prime page or Seed&Spark page or whatever, you might want to have your own dedicated account so that people who just want that information can go there. And so, you know, even if they're just a fan of the podcast or just a fan of the behind the scenes web series or whatever, they have like a distinct place to go for that information instead of having to dig through your own account and what else you have been talking about, like as a solo person. Also, if your project is ongoing, having a project specific account is going to be really important, especially if it's like a podcast or a web series, something with multiple pieces of content around the same project. And of course, if you are making multiple works and you yourself are not necessarily the central thing, you're just maybe involved in everything, having a production company account that can consolidate multiple ongoing projects or multiple projects in sort of succession might be the better choice for you.
I do think we should maybe talk about some cons too, to like the project only side, because I think sometimes filmmakers rush into creating an account for their project and then that project ends and they're sort of, it's just a dead account. That, or you don't have the bandwidth to manage both, because I do think like at the end of the day, you are the brand, because it's your voice and vision that you're carrying from project to project, regardless of whatever it is, especially if you're like a director for hire or you produce for hire or you're a writer, obviously if you're an actor. And so I really recommend having an account for yourself, and to some extent, even if you are maybe uncomfortable like speaking in first person and all of that, because you want to brand yourself. As much as that sounds like icky to think of yourself as a brand, it's really helpful, you know, especially if you wear multiple hats, as Brie and I both do, because we own a production company, we each own a production company, and we work for Seed&Spark, and we also like write for other platforms, and so it's helpful to have that, and to have your own project can be helpful if you're, especially like, for instance, for one of my features, it's a genre film. So I found it really helpful to be only tweeting genre stuff on that account, like horror stuff, because fans of horror like will really gravitate towards something that's exclusively and specific to the genre, as opposed to just like my brand. as a filmmaker or my production company, which tends to like cross different genres. That said, managing multiple accounts takes a lot out of you. And it's better to have one really active account rather than a few that are just kind of like occasionally active and not really
Scattershot.
urgent. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, no, I definitely agree. And we have a question from Sarah who asks how recent the demographics we just reported here are. 2019. So this was last year's most updated stats on usership on different platforms. So yeah. So this is a case study for Dear White People. Christine, I'm going to let you take this one because you're more familiar with it back in the day.
Cool, yeah. So Dear White People, I don't know if people know this, it was crowdfunded originally, the film. I'm a huge fan of both the movie and the series, and I've been following it since pretty much the beginning because we were crowdfunding at the same time in 2012 for features, but on different platforms. And mine was a much smaller goal, much smaller project. But Justin Simeon was really excellent at creating a voice and a world around the movie that he was making through Twitter, through social media. And he has a background in PR. I believe he was a publicist at the time, so he kind of has that a little bit of as an advantage. But you know, you can train yourself, you can teach yourself to think this way and to try creative things. And so what I thought was really effective about his campaign was that he built a Twitter account for the film in 2010 and spent pretty much 2 years building a fan base for Samantha White, the main character of the film and eventually the series, and didn't really say that this was a movie or that this was a project. People followed Dear White People thinking it was just essentially someone representing this voice, the kinds of things that she says on her radio show. And you can see some examples here in the deck from 2011 of things that the account would say. And then eventually he transitioned into talking about it in the context of the film and the world that he was building, so that by the time they crowdfunded in 2012, they had this following and people were really excited about the film and what it could be and wanted to be part of it. And I know that they had a $25,000 goal, and I believe they hit it within just a few days and ended up almost doubling their goal. And so that's like a really unique example of how having an account specifically for your project can be really beneficial, especially if the voice and the tone and the kind of character that you're trying to put out is not you. Like you don't want that to necessarily be associated with your voice, but you want people to latch onto that voice.
Mhm. Yeah, and since the theme of this project was, if you're not familiar with Dear White People, like, the experience of being a person of color surrounded by people who don't understand your experience and are constantly saying like shitty things to you. This is essentially just like, shit women say, shit white people say, like things like that. And then they turned the thing of people like coming together being frustrated with white people into a film. And so like the long game was really impressive because people were on board. They were like, yeah, I'm also frustrated with white people. And then when the film itself started to come out, they're like, yeah, I've been following this account for a while. Of course I want to get involved. So yeah, that was a really just effective use of like being on brand for the project and understanding like why someone would follow this account even before it was, a Netflix series or a feature film.
Right. One thing that you would see though in normal circumstances, if this didn't get spun off into a series, eventually now you have this huge following for this specific voice that is your film, right? And so can you roll that over into another project? If he wasn't, I don't know what he's going to do next, and thankfully Dear White People has at least one more season, but if he were going to do something very different, like a very different genre film, he may not be able to roll over the following of this account into the new project. And so that's something you want to be aware of, like when you're playing this long game. What are you actually going to do with that audience once the life cycle of this film is over? And can
Yeah.
you roll them over?
To probably your solo account, because at a certain point, once you have enough credibility for a particular project, people are going to start getting curious about who's behind it. So having a solo account that you'd be willing to transition to might be valuable as even like a backup almost. It's sort of like phase 2 of social media marketing. So you've agreed to be social mediaing what now? So of course, you need to find your audience. Don't just be on a platform because you like it. Make sure that your audience is actually there to receive you. and join just one or two platforms, like we mentioned, that fit your lifestyle. So are a way in which you are already using social media. There's something to be said about, like, yes, you need to know where your audience is, but also if your audience is primarily on platforms, or like you have two choices and one of the choices is a platform that you don't naturally use. Like, I don't like Instagram very much because I hate using my phone. I hate that I can't schedule to it, and I'm not very visually minded. I do my best, but ultimately I'm a writer. So even though I know that my audience is probably on Instagram as much as they are on Twitter, Instagram doesn't really fit my lifestyle, and it's going to be frustrating for me to have to remember to use it. So it's not a big portion of my strategy. So that's something to certainly keep in mind, especially because, we have jobs, we have other projects we're working on, we have side hustles, we have all of these other things happening. So if it doesn't fit your lifestyle, it's going to be very hard to maintain.
But
Also, oh,
I was gonna say, but that's also where collaboration comes in, right? So like, if you're not comfortable on Instagram, but you know your audience is there for a specific project in particular, then you maybe want to get someone on your team who is totally in love with Instagram and is very visual and can represent on that platform, and it suits their lifestyle and their time management.
and knows how to put the post from the feed into the story. I don't know how to do that. So like somebody who knows how to use Instagram would be very useful for me.
I'll show you how to do that later, Bree.
Thank you. I don't want to know. I don't want to use Instagram. Anyways, you also need to make sure that you're joining a platform that doesn't make you hate yourself. So Christina mentioned earlier that she's on Twitter less these days because Twitter is very political and toxic. And certainly that makes sense and is very fair. Twitter is a bad website. I think we can all just say it. Twitter's a bad website. It shouldn't exist. Neither should Facebook. But Twitter fits my lifestyle. So for me, using Twitter and using it as a primary source of like where I'm marketing stuff is fine for me, because I don't have the same like reaction to it that other people do. Not to say that that's not valid, and that's why this is in here, is because for people who just do not have a good experience on a particular platform, I know many people, especially young people, have trouble with Instagram and like the sort of insane curated lives that they see and being unable to sort of separate like what is being really displayed. If you know that about yourself, if you're someone who's constantly like deleting social media apps from your phone to like clear your mental space, that's fair. Don't be on platforms that make you unhappy, that make you feel unsafe and uncomfortable. It's not worth it. There are a lot of ways that you can get social without social media. So if this is the point in the presentation where you're like, I actually hate being on social media, that's fair. Don't be on social media. We have lots of resources that we can share with you about, how to connect with people in other ways. So like, take care of yourself first. That is ultimately the most important thing. Of course, you need to join platforms that allow you to plant seeds instead of just adding people. So again, don't post into the void. Don't just like hope that someone sees it because you hashtagged it well. Make sure that however you're using the platform, you remember that you're either meant to be a curator, a place where people can go for a specific type of content, or you are being an active, and or really you're being an active member of the community. You're asking questions, you are sharing things, you are joining discussions that are already happening, and you actually care about the results of those conversations, even if they do not immediately promote your work. You have to get out of the box of thinking that social media is only effective if like I make a sale during every interaction. That's ultimately not the success of social media. The success of social media is when you can build credibility and relationships, because that will be a lot more valuable down the line than making this one sale by like constantly reminding people that you're doing something will, especially in context where people just want to have a conversation, or they just want to learn about something, just want to hear from their friends and their community members about how everyone's feeling at this particular moment in time.
Right. I've personally crowdfunded 4 times for different genres and sort of different styles of filmmaking. And I use social media to kind of keep people engaged. And it is about, as Bree said, planting seeds, because you want people to come with you. And a big part of that is them feeling like they know you and they want to support you and they like the work that you put out as a whole, not because they had that one interaction with you that was very kind of exchange based.
It shouldn't be transactional. It should be a relationship.
That's right.
And then of course, when you're crafting messaging, make sure you're being authentic. So let's break that down. Christina, do you want to take the slide? I just ripped this directly from our crowdfunding slide.
Sure,
and I just did
sure.
this. Some people might have just seen me do this section in a crowdfunding workshop I did about an hour ago. So I'm going to let you see the Christina version of this.
Okay, cool. So I think people have discomfort with social media because there is maybe an expectation that you have to kind of give away all of who you are, and not really knowing where the line is and where the strategy is. And I like to say that there are kind of two types of creators on social that are doing it wrong. There are the ones that are just like selling machines, just all sell, just ask, 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 and they don't fully feel like a human being. You don't necessarily know like their tastes and their interests and what they like to do. You just know that they make stuff and they're always asking you to support it. And then there are the ones that are just using social media like your average person, and you wouldn't even necessarily know that they are a creator, you know. And so on Instagram, their content is just like their pets and their vacations and their meals, which is all great. But you also maybe want to see them like on set and out and about at a screening of their work. And so it's kind of about finding that happy medium. And we see a stat that for every one self-promotional post you want to do, you have to do 9 that are not self-promotional. But I think that you can be kind of strategic within that and still have them indirectly promote what you're working on and promote your brand, right? So if you are making a film that is shot in a specific location, sharing interesting facts about that location, sharing, you know, the like visuals of it, sharing history about it, that's a way that you can sort of be world building without directly talking about your project, right? And so what I like to use for my own examples, I do a lot of horror content. So I am on social media not just talking about my own work, but I'm also, you know, searching hashtags. I'm looking at the latest horror movies that have come out, and I look for those conversations that are happening, and I jump into them. And I'm genuinely, authentically a fan, so I can do that without feeling like I'm selling, because I'm genuinely interested. Like, I just want to participate in these conversations. But I'm also building relationships. I'm finding people who have similar feelings as I do. And I'm kind of collecting information about what people want, what they're not getting, and so that I can say to someone, hey, you know, I really enjoyed this conversation that we had. Can I collect your email? Or maybe just at the very least they follow me so I can DM them at some point. And in 6 months when I'm crowdfunding, I can say, hey, I know that you want these things out of your content, and I'm offering that with what I'm making. And so that's sort of how you can authentically use that space. Some other things to keep in mind, you really want to kind of walk the walk. I think that it's hard to ask people to support you as a creator if you're not doing that yourself. And a great way to kind of check all of these boxes is to curate what you are a fan of that is also supporting other creators who may cross promote with you, who may share your stuff, retweet you to their audience, who maybe will take an interest in your content. So it's like, who are you a fan of? What content is maybe similar to yours in style or tone or genre or type of representation? And can you promote that? Can you kind of be altruistic by supporting them, but also build your audience through that because there's a similarity there. And then obviously not the tone of like what you actually say and how you say it is important. If you are similar to kind of the Dear White People example, if you are maybe making a film that's kind of about someone who's like bitter and sarcastic and really dry, then like maybe that can be your tone on social media if that makes sense for you. But generally speaking, you do want to try and be positive, and you want to come off as excited, like this is something exciting to join, and not be pessimistic and not be sort of begging. And that's kind of a bad habit that we see on social with, and not just social, just sort of in general with crowdfunders, especially early on, is this idea of like begging for help. You know, please help me, please help us make this happen. That's not really what you want to set in terms of tone. You want people to jump on the bandwagon that looks like it's really going to take off. And so it's about using words like join and participate and pledge and contribute, because they are contributing towards the creation of something, right? They are participating and making something, and that's the tone that you want to set.
Yeah,
Anything?
I think that's true. I also, the examples that I like to give for this is that who you are and who you want to reach also applies to like the different ways that you pitch your project depending on who you're talking to. Because it's going to all be authentic if you maintain who you are, if you maintain the blue circle portion, if you still sound like you, if your like tone of voice, your word choice still sounds like a person, a human versus a selling machine. But like what happens in the purple depends on like what foot first you're putting. So like, you know, I am a queer female creator. So when I talk to other women and like primarily women creators, I will, you know, lead with the woman part, and I will lead with my strong female characters and how I try to have gender parity behind the scenes. And I like to put women in department heads, blah, blah, blah. And that's true. And that's authentic and it will sound like me. But if I'm talking to a group of queer creators, I will probably, you know, start not with the fact that I have lots of women protagonists, because that's not as relevant necessarily to like their interests, but I would maybe talk about how I really strive for asexuality representation in my work, because I'm an asexual woman and there really aren't any pieces of media about us. There's like a throwaway line in sex education about it. So that would be what I would lead with. I'm still talking about the same project. I'm still being authentic and I'm talking about it in terms of what I'm passionate about, but I understand that different groups of people are going to, you know, be interested in different aspects of myself and my work. And so knowing who I'm talking to and making sure that I genuinely believe in the thing that I'm leading with is just as important. Just understanding the context of who you're talking to and what might be most interesting to them at first.
Yeah, totally. All right.
So this is just our pro tips section. These are just general things that you should be thinking about with social media. I'm going to move where the Zoom thing is so I can read. So Buffer, Hootsuite, TweetDeck, things like that are really great for scheduling and automating your content. So it's not good to schedule and automate like your entire social media calendar for a crowdfunding campaign, but there's to a certain extent, like the just link to the campaign itself is going to be relevant throughout the entire 30 days you're crowdfunding. And you don't need to be the one posting that every morning. So if you can automate like the just reminders of things and make each one a little bit playful and a little bit unique, that is going to be a good thing to schedule out. So then you don't have to worry that like people will be hearing about the campaign. And so that the stuff that you're posting dynamically in the moment is the more engagement based stuff. Like you can be on hand to actually communicate with people while your, you know, automated scheduling stuff is making sure to like put out new content consistently, because that's something you can do all in one day rather than having to like wake up every morning and remember what you have to post that day. Like you can already have that set aside so you can just be on board for the, you know, back and forth portion. Visuals matter. Using a platform like Canva to make quotes and basic like graphics to make sure that there's something visual to go along with your promotional post, or using a site like Jiffy to make easy GIFs. You can use like a YouTube video. And so I love making GIFs of my projects when I'm promoting them because it shows off the project. Not everyone knows how to make GIFs. So when they see that you've GIFed like your indie film, they get really impressed all of the sudden. And it's just a good piece of like distinct marketing from the classic just screenshots and stuff like that. Staying on brand, super important. The more that you can theme your content, whether that's through like the style of screenshots or whether it's the GIFs and the type of GIFs that you make or the color palette that you're using, the templates that you're using, having a logo on all of the whatever, like the more people can see the theme in your promotional efforts, the more that they'll recognize it around the internet, so that you're creating sort of a consistent brand for yourself and for your project. So when they see those cues, they're reminded. It's like, it's the reason that so many like corporate logos are so simple, because like people can commit simple like distinct things to memory, so that when they see them elsewhere, it's a lot easier for them to connect like the emotions they feel whenever they see it. So having something consistent about what you're posting from a visual standpoint specifically is going to help you a lot. Of course, Christina already mentioned this, but remember the 1-to-9 ratio. For every one strictly self-promotional post, 9 should be about something else, whether that's sharing like research that you're doing about your project, whether it's sharing other people's work that's similar in genre, you know, whatever it is, make sure that you have it, like, again, people should have a reason to follow this account, even if they don't know who you are.
And it could also be totally unrelated to the project, but it is related to who you are as a person, right? And so again, it's like, I find that people, and this, I see this in myself as well, like I want to support people more when I feel like I know them. Like I'm friends with them. I see how hard they work. I see that we have certain things in common. Like we both have cats, or like we both, I don't know, we're both like the same, have similar ethnic backgrounds. Like there's just sort of interesting threads that make me feel compelled to support someone when I feel like I know them as a human being. And so it may be like a post that doesn't have any real strategy behind it, except that the strategy is to flesh you out, right?
Mhm. Yeah, and I also think that it's worth remembering that, like, when people are looking at your content, A, they can tell when they're being sold to, but B, like, it's I've lost my train of thought, but it's something I was gonna say something to the effect of, like, being able to trust someone as a purveyor of content that you're interested in, like, I wouldn't trust you if all you talked about was one thing.
That's
Because
right.
that's not like, especially when I don't know who you are, like, if that's all you're talking about, like, what else is there? Like, I don't trust that there is a real person behind this. So that, like, authenticity very much is sharing content outside of that.
Right. In a world of bots, you know.
Exactly. How do you make yourself not look like a computer?
Right.
So here's more pro tips. Pre-write social media copy. So this is something that we always try to recommend, especially for crowdfunders, is when, because frequently people ask people to share their campaign with friends, but then they just sort of leave it up to the followers, like how they promote to friends and family. And I don't know about you guys, but most human beings that I have met are very lazy. And that's nothing against them. I am also extremely lazy. And when it's not my project, it can often be hard for me to think of, like, how should I describe this accurately? And as soon as I have to start thinking about, like, what should I write in order to share this post, like, you've already lost like 50% of the people who were theoretically willing to share it. So if you can pre-write a tweet or an Instagram caption or a Facebook post and give somebody an image and just say, hey, copy and paste this onto your feed. That's all I'm asking. You're going to get a lot more people actually doing that because they don't have to do any of the work. Copy and paste, that's all. And then you get to control the language, you get to control the description, and you can make sure that you are tagged and that the correct link is being used. The more you give them already prepared, the more likely they are to act on it. And so putting that in all of your updates is going to be really important. Make sure that make your lowest incentive tier a shout out. And even if that's all you're really offering, like, hey, for 10 bucks, we'll shout you out on social media. Make a quick, easy, like personalized on brand graphic for each that you just maybe swap out their name, because people are far more likely to reshare their social media shout out if it's visual and has their name on it, especially if they're maybe not even expecting that. The more you can make people feel special and the more you can make the thing that makes them feel special grab attention, the more likely they are to reshare and the more likely other people are to like pay attention to it and like do a little investigating about where they got this cool graphic. Remember to put the fun in crowdfunding. So have social media exclusive offerings to reward your followers. Just because social media doesn't convert at a very high rate doesn't mean that it doesn't convert at all. I think my calculations were 16 of the people who gave money to my last crowdfunding campaign came through exclusively through social media. And a lot of those people, at least 7 or 8 of them, so almost half of the people who did end up giving me money as a result of social media, did so because I was offering something specifically on social media, not anywhere else. I didn't email anyone about it, but I was offering something specific to my social media followers. One night I was drawing happy vegetables for anyone who gave me $10 or more that night. And so I just did little stupid doodles of different kinds of vegetables. And I would tweet out the picture to whoever was like, hey, I just gave money. And I would tweet it to them, And so only people on Twitter and Instagram actually like heard about this incentive. And because I was very clear, like, hey, this is going away soon. So if you see this post and you want a happy vegetable of your very own, you better give now. And that was a really fun way of having something not specifically crowdfunding related to promote to. Like I was promoting these stupid little graphics, but also it was a great way of getting people like to act immediately, which is the best way to get people to act. Like the hardest part is introducing yourself to someone and then having to like follow up with them 6 months later. So if you can grab somebody's attention on social media right then, that's going to be the most effective way to move them into actually contributing.
I remember also when when you were crowdfunding, I planned to give and then I saw you were doing the drawings and I think I intentionally lined it up because I wanted a vegetable. So like it didn't necessarily make me contribute, but it was like, oh, it got me to act at a particular moment because I was like, I want my own vegetable, and then you made me a mushroom.
And actually, some people contributed a second time when they saw something special on social media. Like somebody would give like $5, but then later on they would see me promoting something on social media. They'd already been convinced to give money, and then they were like, "Well, I mean, what's $5 more?" Something like that. So that's also a really powerful way of getting people who already gave money to get excited to give just a little bit more. Like those offerings are rarely like big ticket items, but if you can make it fun and interactive and visual, then that can be a really good way of like enticing people specifically on social media because you have the immediacy of it. And then finally, always include a link to match with whatever your call to action is. So this is something that is bananas to me, but I've seen it so many times. I had a friend a couple of years ago who was crowdfunding, who posted about it 16 times in a week on Facebook, and not a single one of her posts had a link to the crowdfunding campaign. There wasn't even a link like on the image. Like they didn't have like the URL displayed on like the promotional images. They had all this beautiful promotional imagery, and I had no way of getting to the campaign. I spent probably 15 minutes Googling trying to figure out the search terms because they weren't like, all of their social was kind of cutesy and wasn't specific about like what the name of the project was. It was just, hey, we're crowdfunding. And so it took me a while to find it. I did the work because I was friends with this person and they had posted about it to me. And then I was like, I have no way of getting to this thing. I want to give you money. How? So, for crowdfunding especially, but also for marketing, like if you don't have a link, if you don't have a way for people to get to the next step, then it's a wasted effort. Even if somebody is intrigued by a picture, a graphic, a GIF, if there is no way for them to like complete their call to action from that post, then that post hasn't done its job. There should always be a link.
I will say on Facebook, including a link sometimes kind of messes the algorithm up, so like it doesn't get shown as much. They like to show kind of native photos and videos, in which case maybe a link makes sense in the comments, like immediately under the post as opposed to in the post, but let them say that like in the comments, or in bio or in
Sure.
the cover photo. Like just make sure that they know where to go to find it.
And make it as easy as possible for them. Because remember, the ultimate, like the point of having something on social media is for people to do something with the information. So whatever you want them to do with it, make it as easy as possible for them to achieve that. And so here's some things for what not to do, because that's just as valuable. There's some social media etiquette that is worth talking about. So we've already talked about this a lot, but shouting into the void, AKA only posting about yourself and relying on hashtags to connect. Remember, it's called social media for a reason. You actually have to reach out to people. People aren't going to find you because you hashtagged it right. That might happen once, that might work out once for you, but that's not a good like ongoing strategy, because ultimately like you're not building connections. You're just getting sort of like the couple of bored people who happen to be on that hashtag that day. And that's not an ongoing connection that you can use to like develop a real relationship with these people. Don't set up auto DMs for new followers. I haven't seen this as much lately, but there was like a 1.5 year period of time where anytime I followed somebody in like the indie film web series world, I would follow them and immediately get like an automatic DM from some plugin they plugged in that like set me a link to everything they'd ever done. It was like, hello, new follower, thank you so much. And it was insane. We know it's a robot. We know it's not you. So like sometimes I would immediately unfollow because I was like, oh, I don't want this. This is not the energy I am looking for on my feed.
If they're doing it with an immediate follow, then you know that they probably do it with everything. Like when they release a new episode of something, and it's like, I don't need that in my DMs all the time.
No, yeah, I'm not interested in this. So it has to be actual engagement. I don't want your robot announcing to me when things are happening, because that's not a connection. I wouldn't automate a message to my mom. I don't want your automated message.
That's right.
This is definitely still happening. Tagging people in photos they aren't in. This used to happen a lot when I managed a social media account for the company that I was working for previously, where people would tag us in photos because they wanted us to promote them, but we were not mentioned in any other part of the post. We were not like, they hadn't posted it to our website. Our logo wasn't anywhere. They weren't talking to us. They just had posted a general promotional post and then tagged a bunch of like press outlets and organizations that they thought were relevant enough to retweet. The problem is that just makes me annoyed. That makes me mute you, because then I'm getting the notifications of every interaction with that post. And so is everyone else tagged. And that just makes us irritated, because it's not about us. I don't want to get notifications for something that isn't about me, that I can't act on. And there is absolutely no goodwill here. Like,
Right.
you're just trying to get attention for no amount of work. So why would I help you?
I see it a lot with personal like Facebook posts for crowdfunding campaigns, and yeah, it's
Mm,
such a pet peeve where I'm just like, just ask me, just send me a message and say like, hey, I'm making this thing and I think you'll be into it. Don't just say, there'll be like 50 people tagged in this post, and it's really just them being like, I'm crowdfunding with this expectation that whoever's tagged is just automatically going to contribute. And I probably would if I saw it, but because I'm tagged, it just automatically annoys me because now I have to
mhm.
turn off notifications. And yeah, so it
And
doesn't have
even
to
if
be
you do
personal
end up giving
things.
to that campaign, you're always going to have that association with it. So like, would you say that you would be less likely to like engage with the finished product if that was their marketing methodology?
Yeah, because I also there was no offer in that. Like, why should I actually care about this thing? You're essentially just kind of assuming our friendship or whatever our relationship is enough to get me to click, and it may be the case, but I still want to know why. Like, what is your why? Why should I care? What is exciting about this? Because yeah, then I probably won't watch the end product. And to be honest, that has been the case in those instances where I've been tagged like that, and I don't think I've even ever followed the updates of them.
Yeah, well, why would you? And remember, crowdfunding done best is audience building first, fundraising second. So like, you might have successfully fundraised your project, but if no one's there to watch it, did you really succeed in crowdfunding? I would argue not. So this is just a screenshot that I thought might be useful for you guys to see. So this is how I managed social media marketing for my last crowdfunding campaign. So everything, this is basically how I manage it. So I had the month, the day, the weekday, and then morning, afternoon, evening were the content that I was posting. So this was a way for myself and my co-creator of this last project, we could just make a bunch of like sample tweets. So like, this is for Twitter specifically. And so he and I basically collaborated, and like, I assigned him a couple of days and I had a couple of days, and we just wrote standard tweet language. So most things in the gray were things that I could just schedule out, that it didn't matter what day it was. It's just as long as it was posted frequently, that would be fine. But you'll notice that there are a couple of things that aren't grayed out. So these are posts that I wasn't able to schedule because I needed something that didn't currently exist. So in these cases, we had this whole system where we would make Seed&Spark updates. I would post what's it called? Storyboard. I would post storyboard and final scene like side by sides to show you like how the original terrible stick figure storyboard translated into the end film. And then I would like talk about my directing process. And so I would post those to our Seed&Spark updates, and I didn't have a link to that until I actually posted it. So once I posted that, I would then come in here, find the copy that I had already written for how I wanted to promote that, and then I would schedule that post out.
We have
So
a
this is
question.
how we kind of, oh yeah.
Someone wants to know if you used Excel for this.
This is in Google Sheets, but yes, I like using Google because I can easily share it with somebody and we could be editing at the same time. So I can see like, oh, he's got the afternoon tweet for this day. I don't need to worry about that. But yeah, I use Excel. It's just a good way of laying out like, these are all the days that I need to be posting something on social media. And it's also a good way of saying like, okay, it's been like 5 squares since I mentioned this incentive, so we should probably bring it up again. And so that was a way for me to kind of arbitrarily but kind of evenly lay out the things that I knew we wanted to promote. But I also made sure to have a system of, once I had scheduled that content, I graded out. And so I knew that I didn't have to worry about it. So I would check in the morning, if I woke up on February the 25th, I would say, oh, okay, I've already scheduled out all the content. So anything I post today is just extra. But the next day, if I woke up on Wednesday, I'd look and I'd say, oh, okay, so there are 2 things that I couldn't have scheduled previously. So I need to do an additional action before I put those into the schedule. And that was just a handy way for me to know like what I needed to do on the day and what I had already like done for myself in the past. Everything in the gray was what past Bree did for me. And it's just a good way of like, because I had to schedule 30 days worth of content all at once, having all of the content planned on the day and like what time of day generally I wanted it to be posted was really, really helpful, because then I could just kind of knock it out in an afternoon. So I managed to schedule a month's worth of content and plan for a month's worth of content in like just a couple of hours. And that way, you know, when I woke up on Tuesday feeling overwhelmed, it was fine because my accounts were tweeting for me. But on days where I had a little bit more energy, I knew exactly what was already coming out and how I could, you know, go within. That's just my system. It's just how I happen to do it. So these are a smattering of Christina posts to talk like specifically about what you post. So I'm just gonna go ahead and click them.
This is really just me being lazy and not wanting to scroll very far down my Twitter feed past the many political retweets. But I haven't crowdfunded recently. I only crowdfunded as recent as 2017, but I've released a feature since then. I've released multiple shorts, and I've had shorts in festivals. And I was just trying to think of maybe what would be different from what Bree is sharing from hers. And something I tend to do with my own Twitter account is recap festivals and things that I loved. So like my favorite films that I saw at a specific festival, whereas my production company account would just be like promoting our content, and the recaps that we do on that tend to be very focused on like actually the play by play of like what the experience was like and what the reception was to our film. And for me, it's like opinion based. I share my opinions, my taste. I support other creators. I tag them when they're on social if I can find them. And it's like sort of checking those boxes on that tone slide. And it's also just me, like I love movies, right? So I want to share my opinion of things that I liked, but that's sort of a comparison there. And Brie, I know you have others that are more crowdfunding specific.
Yeah, so the smattering of Brie posts. So this is, we talked about it earlier, but this is one of the posts I did about the happy vegetables, or in the featured image in this one, the sexy potato. A friend of mine was like, if I give you $10, will you draw me a sexy potato? And I was like, I absolutely will. Give me the $10 and we'll talk. So this is what I created. And then you can see Christina's mushroom in the background. But like, this is an example of a post for this particular gambit of mine, where I was like, it was late at night and I was like, I'm bored and I want more people to give me money at this exact moment. So I created this, and it was just, it ended up being a really fun like couple of hours where I was just doodling these little vegetables and sharing them. And as you can see, you know, I have like the immediacy in this post. So like, hey, I'm getting good at vegetable doodles and showing you an image of them. But as it grows closer to midnight, which at that was like, and up until midnight, I was going to do these doodles. But once it hit midnight, that was it. That's all the time you had. So that made it like an immediate like act upon moment. And then I reminded them how they could get it, which is a pledge of $10 or more to, and then my link to my CTA. I made sure to people knew what was happening, why it was happening, how much longer it was happening for, and how they can get involved. So that was an effective tweet, in my opinion. This is an example of a post from my production company account, Undead Burrito Productions. Very professional, thank you very much. So this is, I did a whole thread on, because we have 5 projects that are considered sort of part of the Undead Burrito umbrella. We have 2 short films and 3 web series. So this was an example of the post I made about one of my short films, which this is a GIF from that post. It's not only a GIF of like the image, but also like one of the most quoted quotes from that post. Something that's interesting about this tweet about like promoting this particular short film was that, so I hashtagged asexuality and anxiety, but a couple of weeks later, I posted a much like not worse tweet, but like there wasn't as nice of an image, and I didn't have the whole hashtags, but I mentioned like, hey, if you want to watch a film about asexuality, you know, click here or something. And I got way more engagement on that post. So it's interesting to me that the actual hashtag post was less popular than the slightly less polished, you know, unhashtagged version. So that said to me, I might need to do a little bit more investigating about like how people in the asexual community find content on Twitter about them, because I know they're there. I know asexual people are on Twitter, and I have gotten a lot of fans as a result of posts like this, but the lack of the hashtags seemed to be more effective. So I have to do more research into that. And then here is an example of, like I mentioned, we were doing the storyboard to screen comparisons. So this is what I did on social media, where in order to get people to click the link, which was just a link to the update, but the update was on our Seed&Spark page. So I was kind of sneakily sending them to our crowdfunding page. I just shared the portion of the image that I made with the storyboard. And if you wanted to see what it looked like on screen, what would have taken the place of that question mark, you had to actually click through. So this was a way that I tried to like tease people like, hey, do you want to see what this terrible stick figure drawing ended up looking like in the final film? Well, you got to click through to see. And of course, the first thing they see when they click through is my crowdfunding page and then the post that I had mentioned. So that was like a fun way of like giving them content, but also giving them content on our crowdfunding page.
I think an important point is that you want to, no, that's fine, you can go to the next, is that you want to make sure that you're not being repetitive, so that there's distinct differences between you and your production company. Like Bree and I kind of are the main voices behind both our production companies, and so sometimes it can feel like, well, like, what am I putting out on Congested Cat because I'm just going to retweet it on mine, or vice versa. And it's kind of like, what is the point of having these two? And so you want to make sure that you're not just being redundant and actually finding a different way of using them so that they feel there's a reason why someone can follow both of the accounts, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The Undid Burrito posts in my case are more like project specific because we have such a library of content. We pretty much exclusively talk about stuff related to that content, and like, curated stuff. My account is just, I've seen, I think a couple of you just followed me on Twitter, and I'm sorry. Enjoy the ride, because it's honestly,
you, right? Like it's your voice as a creator and how that impacts the work that you put out. And I would say that that's like for me too, where who I am as a human being and my opinions and my points of view and things that I care about, you can see all of that on my personal account, and then you go look at the content that's being promoted on Congested Cat and you can see how all of that flows out of my work, right?
Yeah, I would share the Undid Burrito post with like someone interested in my work, and I would send my account just to somebody I met at a networking event. That's kind of the difference. So these are just examples of Instagram stories that I designed and posted. So I hate Instagram, but I understand that like my audience is there. So these are 3 examples of things that I made for this last crowdfunding campaign. So one was like a talking point about like, do you want to know what this film is about? Well, one of the things it's about is capitalism. And, I contextualized it about like, because I knew millennials were my audience, like millennials who hate capitalism, which turns out to be a much larger percentage of people than you might expect. And so I gave some statistics about like how bad capitalism is for millennials. In this post, in the middle post, I was highlighting our different cast members and pointing out where on the Seed&Spark wish list you could pledge to them directly, so that like their friends and family, if they didn't really understand the film as a whole, but like wanted to support their friend or family member, they knew exactly where to go. And then finally, this was an incentive highlight. This was our $25 incentive. We would put you into a anti-capitalism propaganda poster. So I highlighted what that looks like and like made the Instagram story sort of in the design of the anti-capitalism poster. And yeah, it's question time. Perfect.
Yes, one question. So this is regarding your structure for social posts. Is that in place of Buffer, Hootsuite, and TweetDeck?
No, it's in tandem. So basically what I did is I draft everything in the Excel spreadsheet so that I know, because it's hard in like Buffer, Hootsuite to kind of see laid out where it is. And I don't like composing on the fly. I like to compose everything all at once, so have an idea of what I'm posting every day. And then once that's in place and I can like move things around, like, oh, I posted this about this too quickly after each other, I'm going to switch this out. Once I have my schedule for myself, then I add it. So I use TweetDeck primarily because it has unlimited posting. You can post to multiple accounts from the same thing. And I primarily use Twitter. And so I took the content in the Excel spreadsheet, and everything that was in gray, I pre-scheduled, and everything in white was something when I like woke up that morning and checked the spreadsheet was something that I needed to add into TweetDeck that day once I had like the link or whatever it was that I needed, that I couldn't have pre-scheduled. So that's kind of how they interact with one another. I compose all of the tweets and the schedule in the Excel spreadsheet where I can collaborate with someone else. And then once that is set, I then go to schedule it.
Yeah, I do the same. At least during crowdfunding. I would say like outside of crowdfunding, that amount of prep isn't really necessary.
But like for crowdfunding, you have like a concentrated period of time that you have to fit a bunch of content within. So that's, yeah, I agree. I also don't plan that much for my day-to-day.
those tools can still be really helpful even outside of crowdfunding, like just to kind of maintain activity, especially if you just crowdfunded and now you're going into production. So you can't be as reactive and like live on social, but you want to maintain engagement. Scheduling stuff can be really great for that, especially like evergreen material that isn't necessarily specific to that day that it may be going out. Let's see if we have any
Totally.
questions. Doesn't look like it. I think if we were on Facebook Live, we would maybe have a few more. But
Yeah, I know there was somebody, Jules mentioned earlier in this chat when we were talking about the difference between a solo account and a pro account, like a production account. Jules made a good point about how she uses her, like the differences. She has both a personal account and an account for her project. And she says that something that she uses is she follows different people from each account because her feed on her personal Twitter might be very different. And that's definitely true, especially when you're trying to curate specific content. It might be helpful for like your show account or production company account to follow very specific people, not necessarily like your friends and like, you know, other people in your community, but specifically following like news organizations or press outlets, podcasts, things like that that post in your genre, so that when you log into your production account, you're only seeing content that might be good to reshare. So that's definitely a good point, and a potential reason why you might want both is to keep your follower list separate.
Totally. I think that is it. We are going to be broadcasting this out to Facebook, even though we couldn't be live. So if you do end up having questions, you can post them in the comments and they'll come our way through our team members.
And if you want a copy of this social media deck with all of the images and advice and product questions and stuff, product like suggestions and stuff, I believe our wonderful Katrina is putting them in the link. There should be a Google Forms link. Oh, we do have another question though.
Yeah.
Which is better with Facebook and Instagram?
Is that
I think it's in context with like Buffer, Hootsuite. So Buffer and Hootsuite, I think both do either. I prefer Buffer just from a UI perspective. Hootsuite, I have never gotten to work. It just does, I hate the design of it. No offense to Hootsuite, but the design of their like scheduler has not changed in a decade, and you can tell. Buffer, I think you can't post quite as many things for free, but I do find to be a better UI, and it allows you to post to Instagram in certain circumstances. But so like both of those, you can post to a number of different social media platforms, I think including like LinkedIn and Tumblr in some cases. I primarily use TweetDeck because I don't have to pay for it. It's a free program. And because I'm primarily posting to Twitter and to a variety of Twitter accounts, that just makes more sense to me. But I have used Buffer in the past.
And Facebook, you can do it all in platform, and that's usually what I do. I will just schedule stuff on our production company page in advance right through the platform, because I also know that that will be much more likely to actually be shown to my followers of my page than if I had scheduled from a third party.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Facebook really doesn't like you to use third-party things. Facebook wants you to only post links that go to other Facebook things. So,
right. Do we have another one?
I don't think so. I think that's probably it. But yes, check the comments of both YouTube and Facebook for the Google Sheets sign up so that we can send you the deck. And thanks so much for hanging out with us today. I hope you learned how to social.
And we hope that you enjoyed your lunch, whatever it may have been.
Yes, Christina and I's 4 and 5 p.m. lunches.
Yes. We will be back next Wednesday. We don't have the topic confirmed just yet, but we will get it to you very soon, and we hope to see you.
Make sure to follow Seed&Spark on social media, and you will get all the first stuff, specifically Twitter, probably Twitter and Facebook at Seed&Spark. You will get all of the most recent updates on all the cool events that we're doing.
Yeah, and let us know if there's a topic you want us to cover. You know, we have a list that we're planning to roll through, but we're looking for what the audience actually wants. What do you want to learn? What do you feel like we're not covering in our other educational workshops?
Yeah, definitely. Well, thanks for hanging out with us today.
Bye, everyone.